It was supposed to be the wedding of a lifetime, a $2 million celebration of love between a powerful Dubai Sheikh and a humble Filipina. Instead, it became a bloodbath that exposed a web of lies, betrayal, and the dark underbelly of Dubai's marriage market. For men who believed they possessed the same woman's heart. For men who discovered the truth on what should have been the happiest day of someone's life. For men whose collision would end with bodies on the marble floor of Dubai's most exclusive venue. This is the story of Rosa Delgado, domestic worker, desperate daughter, contract wife, and ultimately, the catalyst for a tragedy that would forever change Dubai's view of the invisible people who keep their paradise running. Before you continue, make sure you're subscribed to our channel and hit that notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next in this story of multiple husbands, hidden identities, a $2 million royal wedding, and the deadly consequences of a deception that spiraled beyond control. Rosa Delgado was born in 1987 in Tanda, Manila, one of the Philippines' most notorious slums. Her earliest memories weren't of toys or birthday parties, but of helping her mother wash other people's laundry in a tin basin outside their corrugated metal shack. This single room, barely 9 feet square, housed Rosa, her mother Lita, and her 3 younger siblings. Their father, a construction worker, had disappeared after a scaffold collapse when Rosa was 8, leaving behind nothing but medical debt and hungry mouths to feed. "We never had enough of anything," Rosa would later tell investigators. "Not food, not space, not time, not hope. But we had love. My mother made sure of that." Lita Delgado had been beautiful once. Old photographs showed a woman with high cheekbones and a defiant smile, the kind of face that turned heads. By the time Rosa was a teenager, that face had weathered into deep lines, the smile replaced by a persistent cough that rattled her thin chest each morning. The doctors at the public hospital had a name for it, pulmonary fibrosis, but no solution beyond medications the family couldn't afford. Despite everything, Rosa was a promising student. Her teachers noted her intelligence, her facility with languages, her determination to complete assignments even when working night shifts at a local factory. She graduated high school at 16, the first in her family to do so, with dreams of becoming a nurse. "I wanted to help my mother breathe again," she would later explain, the irony of her statement apparent only in hindsight. "I thought if I could become a nurse, I could take care of her properly. But nursing school required money the family didn't have." Instead, Rosa found work at a call center, earning just enough to keep the family fed and her mother medicated. For 3 years, she worked overnight shifts, slept 4 hours, then helped at home. Her youth disappeared into the grinding routine of survival. Then came the news that would change everything. Lita's condition had deteriorated. The specialist didn't mince words. Without advanced treatment at a private hospital, she had less than a year. The cost? Approximately 800,000 Philippine pesos, or about 15,000 US dollars. It might as well have been $15 million to a family surviving on $200 a month. "That's when I started looking overseas," Rosa said. "Everyone knew that's where the money was, in Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai. Filipinas who went there as domestic workers sent back enough to build houses, start businesses, put their siblings through college. I needed to go." The process was brutal but efficient. A recruiting agency took 3 months' worth of Rosa's salary as a placement fee. They arranged her visa, her transportation, her training in household management. She learned to iron shirts the way wealthy men preferred. She practiced making beds with hospital corners. She was taught to be invisible yet available, silent yet attentive, always present but never quite a person. In 2014, at 27 years old, Rosa Delgado arrived in Dubai with a 2-year contract to work for the Almaty family, husband, wife, and 3 children under 10. Her salary, $400 per month, with room and board provided. After the agency took their cut and Rosa sent money home for her mother's treatments, she was left with precisely nothing. The Almaty apartment occupied the entire 47th floor of a luxury high-rise. Rosa's first shock wasn't the size, though at 6,500 square feet, it was larger than the entire apartment building where her family lived. but the waste. Food thrown away after a single bite. Clothes discarded after one wearing. Children with so many toys they forgot what they owned. Rosa's quarters were a windowless room next to the laundry, barely large enough for a twin bed and a small dresser. The family explained this was for her privacy, though it soon became clear it was to keep her out of sight when not needed. Her day began at 5 a.m. and often didn't end until after midnight. She cleaned, cooked, did laundry, watched the children, served meals, tidied up after meals, prepared snacks, and maintained an apartment that was perpetually messed up by people who had never had to clean up after themselves. The first time I saw Mrs. Almaty's closet, I cried, Rosa later confessed. She had more shoes than our entire neighborhood owned combined. One pair cost more than I would make in 6 months. And she complained there was nothing to wear. Every 2 weeks, Rosa would make a video call home to Manila. These calls became performances where she played the role of successful overseas worker. Everything's great, Mama. The family treats me well. The work is easy, she would say, forcing brightness into her voice while her mother sat propped up in bed, oxygen tubes snaking into her nostrils. I'm saving so much money. You'll see. Soon we'll get you that treatment. The truth was far different. After 6 months, Rosa had managed to send home barely $1,500. Enough to keep her mother on basic medications but nowhere near the amount needed for the specialized treatment. Meanwhile, Lida's condition continued to worsen. Each call, her mother's face appeared more gaunt, her breathing more labored. The timeline was shrinking. At night, in her tiny room with its humming fluorescent light, Rosa would calculate how long it would take to save enough at her current rate. The answer never changed. Her mother would be dead long before she could afford to save her. The turning point came at a Filipino community gathering in Al Satwa, a neighborhood where overseas workers congregated on their rare days off. Rosa had managed to secure a Sunday free by completing 3 days' work in advance. She sat in a small Filipino restaurant, savoring chicken adobo that tasted almost like home, when she overheard a conversation at the next table. She got $80,000 up front, plus $4,000 every month. A woman was saying quietly to her companion, all for a marriage that exists only on paper. Rosa couldn't help but listen as the women discussed something called contract marriages. The concept was simple yet shocking. Wealthy men in Dubai who needed wives for various reasons, visa requirements, access to inheritance, family pressure, would pay substantial sums to women willing to enter fake marriages. These weren't romantic relationships. They were business arrangements disguised as matrimony. After gathering her courage, Rosa approached the women. The older one, Maricel, regarded her with suspicion at first, but something in Rosa's desperation must have resonated. Over strong coffee, Maricel explained the underground economy that operated beneath Dubai's glittering surface. There are men who need wives for many reasons, Maricel explained. Some need to show their families they've settled down. Some need a wife to access family money. Some need marriage for visa purposes or to satisfy requirements for certain business licenses. And the women? Rosa asked. We need money, Maricel said simply. It's not prostitution. Most contracts explicitly forbid physical relationships. It's just paperwork, appearances at occasional family events, maybe some photos together for social media. For this, they pay amounts we could never earn cleaning their toilets. Maricel introduced Rosa to Elena Garcia, a marriage broker who specialized in connecting Filipinas with wealthy clients seeking contract wives. Elena, a former domestic worker who had married and divorced a German businessman, operated out of a small office disguised as an employment agency. About 1,200 contract marriages happen in Dubai each year, Elena told Rosa during their first meeting. The majority involve women from the Philippines, Indonesia, and Eastern Europe. The going rate depends on the client's needs and the woman's appearance, education, and ability to play the role convincingly. Rosa learned that inheritances in the UAE were often structured to require marriage, especially for conservative families. Business licenses sometimes needed local or regional family connections. Social pressure to marry was intense for men over a certain age. All these factors created a market for women willing to provide the appearance of marriage without the reality. The most important thing, Elena emphasized, is discretion and compartmentalization. Each client believes they're your only client. Each identity remains completely separate from the others. One mistake, one slip of information between worlds, and everything collapses. Rosa listened, fascinated and horrified. The ethical implications were troubling, but the financial reality was compelling. A single contract could provide more money than 5 years of domestic work. Could save her mother's life. There are risks, Elena warned. Legal risks if you're caught committing fraud. Personal risks if the client becomes possessive. Emotional risks when you start forgetting which version of yourself is real. That night, Rosa couldn't sleep. The moral woman raised by a devout mother battled with the desperate daughter watching her mother die slowly. By morning, the desperate daughter had won. "I want to do it," she told Elena the following week. "Just one contract. Enough to pay for my mother's treatment. Then I'll go back to regular work." Elena smiled with something like pity. They all say that at first. The preparation was meticulous. Rosa created 3 distinct looks that could be quickly alternated, different hairstyles, makeup techniques, clothing styles, even slightly different ways of speaking and moving. Elena taught her how to maintain separate phones, separate social media accounts, separate backstories. "You're not just changing your appearance," Elena explained. "You're creating different women. Each must be consistent, believable, and completely isolated from the others." Rosa practiced until she could slip between identities seamlessly. The sophisticated Rosa who had attended international schools, the traditional Rosa with conservative values, the entrepreneurial Rosa with business ambitions. 3 different women sharing only a desperate need and a sick mother in Manila. Farid Khoury first met Rosa at a carefully orchestrated chance encounter at a high-end shopping mall. At 58, the Lebanese businessman had the trim physique of someone who paid expensive trainers, the perfect teeth of someone with access to cosmetic dentistry, and the precisely grayed temples of someone whose barber charged more than Rosa's monthly salary. Elena had selected him from her client list because he seemed the safest option for a first-timer. A businessman whose family trust required marriage to access the full inheritance left by his conservative father. The trust would release $2 million upon marriage, with additional funds accessible after 5 years of matrimony. "He doesn't want entanglements," Elena explained. "His long-term partner is a French man who lives in Paris. The marriage is purely to satisfy the trust requirements." The mall meeting went perfectly. Rosa, dressed in a modest but fashionable outfit that Elena had selected, pretended to be shopping for her employer's wife when she asked Farid's opinion about a watch display. The conversation flowed naturally to coffee, then dinner the following week. By their 3rd meeting, Farid made his proposition. "I'll be direct," he said in the private dining room of a restaurant so exclusive it didn't have a sign. "I need a wife on paper. Elena says you're discreet and understand the arrangement. I can offer $60,000 upfront, plus $3,000 monthly. The marriage would last at minimum 5 years. There would be no physical relationship, though occasional public appearances together would be necessary." Rosa played her role perfectly, initially hesitant, concerned about the ethical implications, gradually warming to the idea when he mentioned the financial compensation. Inside, her heart raced with the knowledge that her mother's treatment was suddenly within reach. The contract was detailed and comprehensive. Rosa would maintain her own residence but be available for family events 4 to 6 times per year. She would post occasional couple photos on a specially created social media account. She would never contact Farid's family directly. She would sign a prenuptial agreement waiving all rights to his personal assets beyond the agreed-upon payments. The ceremony was conducted at a civil registry office with 2 paid witnesses. Rosa wore a simple white dress purchased for the occasion. Farid wore a business suit and checked his watch repeatedly. When the registrar pronounced them husband and wife, there was no kiss, only a formal handshake and the exchange of an envelope containing the first payment. As Rosa signed the marriage certificate in a neat, careful hand, she felt a strange dissociation, as if watching someone else going through these motions. The gold band Farid had provided felt foreign on her finger, a weight that represented both salvation and deception. "Remember," Farid said as they parted outside the registry office, "as far as the world is concerned, we are a happily married couple who simply maintain separate residences due to my international business commitments. My family especially must never suspect otherwise." That night, Rosa transferred $15,000 to her mother's account in Manila, enough for the initial treatments to begin. When she called home, her mother's confusion was palpable. "Rosa, where did this money come from? This is too much. Did you do something illegal?" "I got a bonus, Mama," Rosa lied, the first of many such lies. "The family appreciates my work, and I've been saving. Don't worry about the money. Just focus on getting the treatment. Please." As she ended the call, Rosa stared at the wedding band she'd already removed, now sitting on her small bedside table. What started as a desperate measure would soon become a deadly game where the biggest victim would be truth itself. 6 months into her arrangement with Farid, Rosa had settled into a rhythm. Their marriage existed primarily through carefully staged photographs, occasional dinners when his family visited Dubai, and a meticulously maintained digital presence. Twice monthly, $3,000 appeared in her account. Money that flowed directly to Manila for her mother's treatments, which were showing promising results. Rosa might have been content with this single arrangement had Elena not called with what she described as an exceptional opportunity. "His name is Vikram Patel," Elena explained over coffee at their usual meeting spot. 45, tech entrepreneur, made his fortune in IT outsourcing. Very wealthy, very generous, and very much in need of our services. Vikram's situation was delicate. As the heir to a prominent Indian business family with traditional values, he faced immense pressure to marry and produce children. The reality that he was gay would devastate his elderly parents and potentially jeopardize his position in the family business. A contract wife would solve his immediate problem while he worked on a longer-term strategy. "He needs someone sophisticated," Elena continued. "Someone who can move convincingly in tech circles, speak intelligently about current events, charm his family when they visit from Mumbai, and he's willing to pay premium rates." The offer was staggering. $75,000 upfront with monthly payments of $4,000. More than double Rosa's arrangement with Farid. Enough to not just treat her mother's condition but potentially cure it with advanced therapies available in Singapore. "I already have one husband," Rosa said hesitantly. "Managing 2 identities." Elena dismissed her concerns with a wave. "You've proven yourself capable. And this is different territory entirely, different social circles, different cultural expectations. The chances of these worlds colliding are minimal if you're careful." For this new role, Rosa transformed herself. Gone was the modest, traditional woman who had married Farid. In her place emerged an educated, ambitious Rosa who had supposedly attended international schools and worked in digital marketing. She studied tech industry news, practiced speaking with the confident cadence of a professional, invested in a wardrobe of understated luxury that signaled success without ostentation. The Hindu ceremony was intimate but elaborate, held in a private villa with a handful of trusted witnesses. Vikram's relief was palpable as they completed the rituals that would satisfy his family's expectations. Unlike Farid's businesslike approach, Vikram was genuinely warm, treating Rosa with a friendship that surprised her. "We're partners in this deception," he told her afterward. "Let's at least be honest with each other." Managing 2 marriages required a system. Rosa now maintained 2 separate phones, 2 distinct wardrobes, 2 different hairstyles, and a calendar so meticulously organized that NASA mission controllers would have been impressed. Farid believed she worked for a Lebanese family. Vikram thought she ran a small marketing consultancy. Neither suspected they were sharing a wife with another man. The money transformed her mother's life. Lita moved from their slum dwelling to a small but comfortable apartment. Her treatments progressed from basic care to specialized therapies. For the first time in years, she could walk to the market without stopping to catch her breath. Rosa's siblings entered better schools. The desperate poverty that had defined their existence began to recede. With each video call home, Rosa's confidence grew. She was saving her family, even if the methods were unorthodox. And no one was getting hurt. It was just paperwork, just appearances, just a business arrangement that benefited everyone involved. "You're a natural at this," Elena told her over lunch one day. "Some women can only manage one contract. You're handling two flawlessly." Rosa should have recognized the gleam in Elena's eyes for what it was. Not admiration, but calculation. 8 months after her marriage to Vikram, Rosa sat across from Elena listening to yet another exceptional opportunity. "His name is Jalil Al-Zabi," Elena said. 63, Emirati merchant family. Owns half the textile import business in Dubai. His wife died 2 years ago. His family is pressuring him to remarry, but at his age, he has no interest in building a new life with someone. He just needs to satisfy the family expectations. The numbers made Rosa dizzy. $90,000 upfront, $5,000 monthly. With this third contract, she could not only ensure her mother's complete recovery but establish a business back home, secure her siblings' college educations, create the financial security her family had never known. The risk, however, was exponentially higher. An Emirati contract added cultural and religious complexities her previous arrangements hadn't required. Jalil's family was prominent in local society, increasing the visibility and scrutiny. Managing 3 separate identities would stretch even Rosa's considerable talents for deception. "I don't think I can do this one," Rosa said, pushing away the contract Elena had slid across the table. "Consider it carefully," Elena replied. "Opportunities like this are rare, and your performance so far has been impressive. I wouldn't offer this if I didn't think you could handle it." What Elena didn't say, but what Rosa understood implicitly, was that refusing might jeopardize her existing arrangements. Elena controlled the connections, maintained the relationships, knew all the secrets. Disappointing her could have consequences. 3 days later, Rosa signed the contract. For this third identity, the transformation was complete. She studied Islamic customs, learned basic Arabic phrases, practiced the modest demeanor expected of an Emirati merchant's wife. She obtained a third phone, created a third set of social media accounts, established a third residence. A small apartment Jalil provided where she would supposedly live when not at his family compound. The traditional Emirati wedding was the most elaborate of her ceremonies. Rosa wore an intricately embroidered dress beneath a traditional abaya, her face modestly covered. Jalil's extended family attended, dozens of curious eyes evaluating this woman who had supposedly captured their patriarch's heart late in his life. By now, Rosa moved between identities with unsettling ease. Her calendar operated with military precision. Each husband had designated days and times. Each persona had distinct mannerisms, speech patterns, preferences. The 3 Rosas never crossed paths, never shared friends, never frequented the same locations. In Manila, her mother now received treatment at an exclusive private hospital. The doctors spoke of a full recovery. Her siblings attended prestigious schools. The family that had once barely survived now thrived. All because Rosa had become 3 different women married to 3 different men. 1 year into juggling 3 marriages, Rosa faced an unexpected complication. Emotions. It began with Farid, the supposedly detached businessman who had wanted nothing more than a paper marriage. On their anniversary, he presented her with a platinum necklace set with a single, perfect diamond. "This isn't part of our arrangement," Rosa said carefully as he fastened it around her neck. "Consider it a bonus," Farid replied. "You've made this charade painless, even pleasant at times. That deserves recognition." But it wasn't just the gift. It was how his hand lingered on her shoulder, how his business calls to check in became longer conversations, how he began suggesting vacations together for appearances at resorts that were notably romantic. With Vikram, the shift was even more pronounced. His friendly partnership evolved into genuine affection. He confided in Rosa about his struggles accepting his sexuality in a conservative family. He sought her advice on business decisions. He began introducing her to his closest friends, the few who knew his true orientation. "My parents want to meet you," he announced 6 months into their marriage. "They're coming to Dubai next month." They've been asking about grandchildren. The panic this induced was nothing compared to Jalil's declaration. The elderly Emirati, whom Rosa had assumed wanted the most distant arrangement, proved the most emotionally attached. "You've brought light back into my life," he told her one evening as they sat in his private garden after a family dinner. "I never expected to feel this way again after my Layla died." Rosa's practiced smile remained in place, but internally, she recoiled. This wasn't supposed to happen. These were business arrangements, not real relationships. The contracts specifically outlined the boundaries: appearances only, no emotional entanglements, no physical intimacy. Yet all three men had developed genuine feelings for the different versions of Rosa they believed they knew. Worse, she found herself responding to their affection, different aspects of her personality resonating with each relationship. With Farid, she appreciated his directness and worldliness. With Vikram, his intelligence and humor. With Jalil, his quiet dignity and unexpected tenderness. "They're getting attached," she confessed to Elena during a rare moment of honesty. "All of them. This wasn't supposed to happen." Elena seemed unsurprised. Men always get attached eventually, especially lonely men, especially to women who listen to them, who seem to understand them, who never make demands. "But I'm playing a role. They don't even know the real me." "Perhaps," Elena said with unsettling insight, "they know different pieces of the real you. Perhaps that's why they're falling in love, because each one gets a fragment of authenticity amid the performance." The first near disaster occurred at Dubai Mall. Rosa was having lunch with Farid at an exclusive restaurant when she spotted Vikram entering with business associates. Her heart nearly stopped. With seconds to react, she excused herself to the restroom, texted Vikram from her second phone claiming a meeting delay, and remained hidden until he left the vicinity. That night, alone in her small room at the Almaty residence where she still maintained her cover job, Rosa stared at the 3 wedding rings in their separate locked boxes. For the first time, she couldn't remember which persona had said what to which husband. The boundaries between her identities were blurring, a dangerous development in her precarious house of cards. Sheikh Jasim al-Qasimi entered Rosa's life like a force of nature. Unexpected, powerful, and impossible to resist. It happened at a charity gala benefiting children's education. Rosa was there as part of the catering staff, a job Elena had arranged to provide additional cover for her increasingly complex life. She wore the black uniform of service workers, her hair pulled back severely, her makeup minimal. This was Rosa at her most authentic, the invisible woman who moved through Dubai's elite circles unseen and unremarkable. Sheikh Jasim, at 40, possessed the kind of commanding presence that drew every eye in the room. Heir to one of the UAE's most prominent families, educated at Oxford and Harvard, he managed his family's extensive international investments with renowned acumen. Tall and athletic with features that blended aristocratic refinement with desert warrior heritage, he moved through the crowd with the easy confidence of someone who had never questioned his place in the world. Rosa noticed him immediately, everyone did, but remained focused on her task of circulating with trays of champagne. The collision of their worlds came when an elderly guest stumbled, nearly falling. Rosa reacted instinctively, abandoning her tray to catch the woman's arm, steadying her with gentle efficiency. "Thank you, my dear," the elderly woman said, clutching Rosa's hand. "These old legs aren't what they used to be." "My grandmother," said a deep voice behind them, "always refusing to use her cane because it makes her look old." Rosa turned to find Sheikh Jasim standing there, his expression a mixture of concern for his grandmother and curiosity about the server who had prevented her fall. "Your quick reflexes saved her from a nasty tumble," he continued, studying Rosa with unexpected intensity. "Do you have a name?" "Rosa, sir," she answered, immediately dropping her gaze as befitted her station. "Look at me, Rosa," he said, not unkindly. When she did, something passed between them, a recognition, a connection that transcended their vastly different positions. Later that evening, as she was leaving through the service entrance, a car pulled alongside her. A Rolls-Royce Phantom with tinted windows. The rear window lowered to reveal Sheikh Jasim. "May I offer you a ride home?" Rosa? Every instinct warned her to refuse. This man moved in the highest echelons of Dubai society. His path intersected with her various husbands. Any connection to him threatened the careful separation of her worlds. "Thank you, but I can take the staff bus," she answered. "Please," he said, "I'd like to speak with you. Just a conversation." Against her better judgment, she entered the car. Their first real date occurred 3 days later, a private dinner on his family's yacht. Rosa wore a simple dress borrowed from a friend, conscious that this meeting violated every rule of her carefully constructed life. She had no prepared persona for Sheikh Jasim, no practice lines, no false background. For the first time in years, she was simply herself, the woman from Manila with the sick mother and the desperate choices. "Tell me about yourself," he said as they dined beneath the stars, the Dubai skyline glittering behind them. "The real story, not what you think I want to hear." Rosa gave him an edited version of her life, her family in the Philippines, her mother's illness, her journey to Dubai as a domestic worker. She omitted the 3 husbands, the contract marriages, the web of deception that funded her mother's recovery. His interest seemed genuine, his questions thoughtful. Unlike others who had entered her life, he listened more than he spoke. When he did share about himself, it wasn't with the boastfulness of wealth, but with the reflective quality of someone attempting to connect authentically. "My life has been defined by obligations," he confessed. "The family name, the family business, the family expectations. I've had relationships, of course, but always with women my family deemed suitable. Never with someone who made me feel." "Feel what?" Rosa asked when he trailed off. "Real," he answered simply. Their courtship progressed in secret. Rosa manufactured excuses to her 3 husbands: additional work hours, a sick friend needing care, family obligations. Jasim arranged their meetings with discretion, understanding the complicated position of a domestic worker seeing one of Dubai's most eligible bachelors. With Jasim, Rosa experienced something new: honesty. Not complete honesty. She still concealed her triple life, but emotional honesty. She didn't calculate her reactions or modulate her opinions to please him. She argued when she disagreed. She shared real stories from her childhood. She laughed genuinely at his jokes. "For the first time, I wasn't pretending to feel something," she would later tell investigators. "I was pretending not to feel everything." 3 months into their secret relationship, Jasim took her to the desert. Under a canopy of stars, surrounded by the pristine dunes of the empty quarter, he dropped to one knee and opened a box containing a ring that outshone the night sky. "I know this is sudden," he said, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. "I know my family will have questions, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Rosa Delgado, will you marry me?" The tears that streamed down her face were entirely real, tears of joy mingled with terror. As she whispered yes, Rosa knew she had set in motion events that would either free her from her web of lies or destroy everything and everyone caught in it. The moment crystallized in perfect desert clarity. Sheikh Jasim al-Qasimi, heir to one of Dubai's most prominent families, knelt on a Persian carpet spread across pristine sand dunes. Stars scattered the night sky like diamonds, yet none outshone the 8-carat flawless stone he presented to Rosa Delgado, a domestic worker whose entire life earnings couldn't equal its value. "This belonged to my grandmother," Jasim said, voice steady despite the enormity of what he was proposing. "She told me to give it only to a woman who showed me truth in a world of facades." The irony wasn't lost on Rosa as tears streamed down her face. Her entire Dubai existence was a series of interlocking facades, each more elaborate than the last. Yet something about this moment, about this man, felt more authentic than anything she'd experienced. "I know what this means," Jasim continued. "I know my family will question my choice, but I've never been more certain. With you, I can be myself, not the persona everyone expects." As Rosa whispered yes, a flicker of conscience urged her to confess everything: the 3 husbands, the contracts, the elaborate deceptions. The moment passed. She would find a way to untangle the web, to dissolve her previous marriages quietly. This was her chance at a genuine life, at legitimacy, at love. Your family in the Philippines will never want for anything again, Jasim promised, sliding the ring onto her finger. Your mother will receive the best medical care money can buy. Your siblings will have educational opportunities beyond imagination. All the things she'd already secured through her deceptions, he now offered freely, honestly. The announcement shocked Dubai's elite circles. Headlines ranged from romantic, Sheikh finds love with ordinary worker, to skeptical, royal family questions commoner match. Jasim's family made terse statements about supporting his happiness while privately expressing reservations. Financial analysts speculated about prenuptial agreements. Social commentators debated the fairness gap between a billionaire sheikh and a woman who cleaned homes for a living. Through it all, Rosa smiled for cameras while panic consumed her. Immediately after the engagement, she contacted Elena, desperate for a solution to her 3 existing marriages. "You've created quite the situation," Elena said when they met in a nondescript cafe far from Rosa's usual haunts. 3 contract husbands is unprecedented. A royal engagement on top? Impossible. "I need to dissolve the contracts," Rosa insisted. "Quietly, immediately." Elena's laugh held no humor. "These aren't gym memberships you can cancel with a phone call. These are legal marriages with financial implications, expectations, emotions. There must be a way." "Perhaps," Elena conceded. "But it will be expensive, complicated, and risky. And fast divorces raise questions. Exactly what you don't need right now." The wedding planning proceeded at a dizzying pace. $2 million allocated to create what Jasim's family publicist called the cultural event of the year. The guest list included ministers, ambassadors, business magnates, and celebrities. Designers from Paris and Milan submitted sketches for a wedding dress that would transform Rosa from domestic worker to royal bride in the world's eyes. "The Levantine room or the Grand Ballroom?" asked the coordinator at Dubai's most exclusive hotel, showing Rosa floor plans bigger than her family's entire neighborhood in Manila. "Whatever Jasim prefers," Rosa answered, her mind elsewhere, calculating the risk of Farid, Vikram, or Jalil discovering her engagement through the growing media coverage. Meeting Jasim's family proved as difficult as expected. His mother, a regal woman whose subtle body language conveyed volumes, assessed Rosa with cool detachment. "My son tells me you come from humble beginnings," she said during their first private conversation. "Yes, Your Highness," Rosa answered, using the honorific Elena had coached her on. "How fortunate that your family situation allows for such a unencumbered match. No previous attachments? No complicated history?" Each question probed for weaknesses, inconsistencies. Rosa maintained her carefully crafted narrative. The dutiful daughter working abroad to support her family, the chance meeting with Jasim, the unexpected love. Meanwhile, her attempts to dissolve her previous marriages hit obstacle after obstacle. Farid was traveling in Europe, unreachable for weeks. Vikram had become suspiciously protective, questioning her absences and sudden distraction. Jalil had fallen ill, making any discussion of divorce seem cruel. As the wedding date approached, Rosa attempted to delay. "Perhaps we should wait until next year," she suggested to Jasim. "Give your family more time to accept me." "They will never fully accept you until you're my wife," he replied. "Their objections are noise, nothing more." He interpreted her reluctance as insecurity, her panic as wedding jitters. His reassurances only heightened her guilt, as his honesty threw her deceptions into stark relief. The more time they spent together, the deeper her genuine feelings grew. Unlike her contract husbands, who each knew a carefully constructed version of Rosa, Jasim connected with the real woman beneath the personas. The survivor, the daughter, the dreamer who had sacrificed her integrity for her family's survival. "You've never asked about my wealth," Jasim observed one evening. "Most people can't help themselves." "I've seen enough wealth to know it doesn't guarantee happiness," Rosa answered truthfully. This authentic connection made her increasingly desperate to erase her past. The Cinderella narrative created by the media, domestic worker marrying into royalty, contrasted brutally with her reality as a woman with 3 secret husbands and a foundation built on fraud. The first sign of trouble came 6 weeks before the wedding. Jasim mentioned casually that his security team would conduct standard background checks. "Just formality," he assured her. "Given my position, it's protocol for anyone entering the family." Rosa maintained her composure while internally calculating the risk. Her false identities had been created carefully, but they were never designed to withstand professional scrutiny. The separate personas existed in different circles, different neighborhoods, different contexts, but under the same legal system. Within days, the security team identified discrepancies. Rosa's work history showed gaps. Her residency documentation contained irregularities. Her financial records revealed unexplained deposits inconsistent with domestic work income. These red flags prompted Jasim to hire Khalid Al-Mansour, former intelligence officer turned private investigator, known for his discretion and thoroughness. While Rosa frantically contacted Elena for damage control, Khalid methodically dismantled her carefully constructed world. He photographed her entering Farid's apartment building on Tuesday, Vikram's residence on Thursday, Jalil's family compound on Saturday. He obtained copies of 3 separate marriage certificates, each with Rosa's fingerprints and signature. He documented financial transfers, compiled social media evidence, and constructed a timeline of deception spanning nearly 2 years. When Khalid presented his findings to Jasim, the Sheikh's initial reaction was disbelief. The woman he'd fallen in love with, the authentic, unpretentious Rosa who had shown him a life beyond privilege, was the most elaborate fraud of all. Disbelief gave way to rage, then to cold, calculated planning. Court records would later reveal that Jasim spent 3 days in seclusion after receiving Khalid's report, emerging with a decision that shocked even his closest advisors. He could have ended it privately, one confidant later testified. A quiet cancellation, a generous settlement, a discreet departure. But for a man of his stature in Dubai society, betrayal required a public reckoning. The exposure spread like wildfire through Dubai's elite circles, each of Rosa's husbands discovering the truth through different channels. Farid saw the wedding announcement in a Lebanese business publication while traveling in Beirut. The photograph of Rosa beside Sheikh Jasim froze him mid-sip of his morning coffee. Though her hair was styled differently and her makeup more sophisticated than he'd ever seen, he recognized the woman he'd married for convenience but had grown to care for genuinely. His immediate calls to Rosa went unanswered. His next call was to his attorney in Dubai, who conducted a discreet inquiry that revealed not just her engagement to the Sheikh, but her marriages to Vikram and Jalil as well. Vikram discovered the betrayal through social media. A business associate forwarded him a viral post about the Cinderella wedding with a question mark. Something about the bride's smile in the official engagement photo struck him as familiar despite the different styling. Using facial recognition software from one of his tech companies, he confirmed his suspicions. Further investigation uncovered the full extent of Rosa's deceptions. For Jalil, the revelation came through family connections. His nephew, who worked in government administration, recognized Rosa's photograph in an internal security memo about the royal wedding. Despite her transformation into the picture of Emirati sophistication when with Jalil, her fundamental features remained unchanged. Each man processed the betrayal differently. Farid's response was cold fury, the businessman calculating the financial and reputational damage. Vikram experienced profound humiliation, the man who had trusted Rosa with his deepest secret now exposed to potential ridicule. Jalil felt heartbreak that transcended the contractual nature of their arrangement, the widower who had found unexpected comfort now facing renewed loneliness. What united them was a determination to confront Rosa. Separately, each man formulated a plan to attend the wedding, to expose the fraud, to reclaim some measure of dignity. None knew the others would be there. None anticipated that Jasim already knew everything. Security cameras would later capture all 3 men approaching the wedding venue from different directions at approximately the same time. 6:15 p.m. on what would become the most infamous evening in recent Dubai society history. The wedding day dawned with the artificial perfection that $2 million can buy. The Zabiel Palace Ballroom transformed into a floral wonderland with 10,000 white roses, crystal chandeliers, and gold accents reflecting soft light across marble floors. 500 guests represented the upper echelons of global wealth and power. In a private suite, Rosa stood before a mirror, barely recognizing herself in a custom Elie Saab gown that cost $150,000. A dress that would later be described in court documents as a masterpiece of irony, designed to transform a fraud into a princess. Her hands trembled as she made a final call to her mother in Manila. "After today, everything will be different, Mama," she said, voice steady despite her internal turmoil. "I'm marrying a good man who loves me." "You sound strange, Anik," her mother replied. "Is everything all right?" "Just wedding nerves," Rosa lied one final time. "I have to go now. I love you." Throughout the morning preparations, Rosa noticed Jasim's uncharacteristic coldness. His responses were clipped, his usual warmth absent. She attributed this to pre-wedding stress, to family pressure, to the public scrutiny surrounding their union. The ceremony began with orchestral music and processional pomp. Rosa walked the aisle alone. No family to give her away, no past to acknowledge, only a future she desperately hoped could redeem her deceptions. Jasim waited at the altar, handsome in traditional dress, his expression unreadable. As they exchanged rings, Jasim leaned close, his lips near her ear, his words for her alone. "I know everything, Rosa. About Farid, about Vikram, about Jalil. Every lie, every deception, every false identity. And now you'll face all of them, and me, together." Rosa's blood turned to ice as she realized the elaborate ceremony wasn't a beginning, but an expertly choreographed ending. And somewhere in the crowd, she sensed rather than saw the presence of three men who believed they were her husbands, each coming to claim the truth, none aware they were part of a fourth man's calculated justice. The reception began with the polished perfection of a royal event. Crystal flutes of Dom Perignon circulated on silver trays. A 12-piece orchestra played classical compositions. The 5-tier wedding cake stood 7 feet tall, adorned with edible gold leaf and fresh orchids. Photographers documented every moment for exclusive features in international magazines. Rosa sat beside Jasim at the elevated head table, smiling mechanically, her mind racing with escape plans that dissolved as quickly as they formed. Security personnel positioned at every exit had been briefed to prevent her departure, a detail she hadn't yet realized. When Jasim rose to offer his toast, the ballroom fell silent. 500 guests raised their glasses, expecting the traditional expressions of love and gratitude. Jasim began accordingly. "Today I married a woman who transformed my understanding of love," he said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the vast space. "Rosa showed me that authentic connections can exist beyond the boundaries of class, culture, and circumstance." Rosa relaxed slightly, wondering if his earlier whispered threat had been her imagination. Then his tone shifted. "But authenticity requires truth. Something I discovered was missing entirely from our relationship," he continued, his voice hardening. "My bride has demonstrated remarkable talents for adaptation, for deception, for creating exactly the person each man in her life wished to see." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jasim gestured toward a screen lowering from the ceiling at the center of the ballroom. "Allow me to introduce you to the real Rosa Delgado. Or should I say, the many versions of Rosa Delgado." The screen illuminated with a triptych of images. Rosa in traditional Lebanese attire beside Farid. Rosa in elegant Indian formal wear with Vikram. Rosa in conservative Emirati dress with Jalil. Beneath each image appeared marriage. Certificates with dates, signatures, official stamps. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Phones rose in unison, recording the spectacle. Rosa lunged for the microphone, but security personnel appeared instantly, gently but firmly restraining her. "These marriages remain legally binding," Jasim continued, "making our ceremony today meaningless, legally and emotionally." Rosa's denials died in her throat as the evidence mounted. More photographs appeared, different apartments, different social events, different lives all led simultaneously. Bank records showed payments from all three men flowing to accounts in Manila. When security released her, Rosa collapsed into her chair, the elaborate facade crumbling completely. Through tears, she addressed the stunned audience. "I never meant for this to happen," she said, her voice breaking. "It began as survival. My mother was dying, we needed money for treatments. These were supposed to be business arrangements, contracts, nothing more." Her confession streamed live across Dubai social media, then internationally as news outlets picked up the extraordinary story. Hashtags formed instantly. Hashtag royal wedding fraud. Hashtag three husbands bride. Hashtag Dubai deception. But the public humiliation was just the beginning. What no one anticipated was that Rosa's three husbands had each developed real feelings, and were each on their way to rescue their wife. Farid Khoury arrived first, slipping past the initial security checkpoint by claiming to be a business associate of Jasim's family. His tailored suit and confident demeanor granted him access to the periphery of the reception, where he witnessed Rosa's exposure on the ballroom screens. Instead of retreating, Farid pushed forward, weaving through stunned guests until he reached the head table. His appearance sent a fresh wave of murmurs through the crowd as guests recognized him from the projected images. What kind of man publicly humiliates a woman instead of handling matters privately? Farid demanded, addressing Jasim directly. "Is this how royalty demonstrates honor?" Jasim rose slowly, his composure perfect. "And what kind of man comes to defend a woman who married him solely for money while secretly maintaining multiple other husbands? Is that your definition of honor, Mr. Khoury?" Security moved to intercept Farid, but a commotion at the eastern entrance diverted their attention. Vikram Patel had arrived with two associates, his normally calm demeanor replaced by barely controlled rage. He froze mid-stride when he saw Farid standing near Rosa. "What is this?" Vikram demanded, recognizing Farid from the screen. "You're one of them? One of the other husbands?" Before either man could respond, Jalil Al-Zabi entered from the western door, accompanied by two male relatives. At 63, Jalil moved with the deliberate dignity of a traditional merchant, his weathered face revealing shock as he absorbed the scene. Rosa in a wedding gown, Jasim standing imperiously beside her, Farid and Vikram converging from different directions. For an excruciating moment, the three contract husbands stared at each other, mentally recalibrating their understanding of the past 2 years. Their mutual comprehension was visible, each realizing he was merely one part of Rosa's elaborate performance, each processing that his private arrangement had been replicated twice more. "You told me I was special," Jalil said quietly to Rosa, his voice carrying in the tense silence. "That despite our arrangement, you had developed genuine feelings." "She told me the same," Vikram interjected. "She listened to my deepest secrets, made me believe she understood me like no one else. She convinced each of us we were more than a contract," Farid added. "The performance was flawless. We should applaud her acting skills if nothing else." The three men, Lebanese businessman, Indian tech entrepreneur, and Emirati merchant, formed an unlikely triangle around Rosa, their shared humiliation temporarily overriding their cultural and personal differences. Rosa stood, her wedding dress suddenly seeming like a costume in a macabre play. "I never meant to hurt any of you," she said, addressing all four men. "At first it was just business, the contracts, the arrangements. But then something changed. I started to care, to see qualities in each of you that resonated with different parts of me. Convenient that these feelings developed alongside monthly payments," Jasim observed coldly. Guests began discreetly moving toward exits as security personnel formed a perimeter around the confrontation. Hotel staff exchanged alarmed glances, uncertain how to proceed with a royal wedding that had transformed into a volatile standoff. The violence began unexpectedly. Vikram, the youngest of Rosa's husbands at 45, lunged toward Jasim, interpreting a subtle shift in the Sheikh's posture as a dismissive gesture. "You think this is entertaining?" Vikram shouted. "Our lives, our dignity. Just another amusement for someone who has everything?" Security moved to intercept him, but Vikram's tech industry physique, honed by personal trainers and regular squash matches, gave him unexpected speed. His fist connected with Jasim's jaw, sending the Sheikh staggering backward against the head table. The moment shattered all pretense of decorum. Jasim's security detail swarmed toward Vikram, but Farid intervened, pulling a small pistol from beneath his jacket. "Step back," he commanded. His businessman's composure transformed into something harder, revealing glimpses of a life before corporate success. "This isn't just about your employer anymore." Jalil's relatives, both former military, moved to protect the elderly merchant, producing their own weapons. Guests screamed and dropped to the floor or ran for exits, crystal stemware shattering as tables were overturned for makeshift cover. "Put the gun down," one security officer ordered Farid, his own weapon now drawn. "This doesn't need to escalate further." Rosa stood frozen between her 4 husbands, the 3 she had deceived and the one who had orchestrated her public downfall. Her wedding dress, designed for fairy tale photographs, now restricted her movement as chaos erupted around her. The first gunshot came from an unclear source. Later investigations would suggest it was an accidental discharge during a struggle between one of Jalil's relatives and security. The sound reverberated through the marble ballroom like a thunderclap, triggering panic. Elite guests accustomed to controlled environments stampeded toward exits. Security forces divided between protecting Jasim and attempting to disarm the increasing number of weapons appearing throughout the room. Hotel staff who had been trained for fires and medical emergencies found themselves woefully unprepared for an armed confrontation. From Rosa's perspective, the scene unfolded in surreal slow motion. Farid moving to shield her despite her betrayal. Vikram grappling with 2 security guards. Jalil being pulled toward an exit by his relatives. Jasim watching with cold calculation from behind a protective formation of his security detail. The second shot struck Farid in the shoulder, spinning him against a column. His weapon discharged reflexively, the bullet shattering an overhead chandelier. Crystal shards rained down, adding to the chaos and injuries. 2 of Jasim's security personnel advanced on Vikram, who had managed to obtain a weapon from a fallen guard. In the confusion, Jalil's younger relative was shot in the chest by another security officer who mistook his movement for an attack. Blood spread across the white marble floor, staining the hem of Rosa's gown as she tried to reach Farid. 3 more shots echoed in rapid succession from different points in the ballroom. Screams and the crash of overturning furniture created a cacophony of terror. By the time specialized police tactical units breached the ballroom 7 minutes after the first shot, the wedding reception had transformed into a combat zone. Bodies lay among overturned tables, blood mingled with spilled champagne, and the elaborate flower arrangements had been trampled into unrecognizable pulp. Dawn broke over Dubai as medical examiners worked inside the hotel ballroom, now cordoned off as one of the most high-profile crime scenes in the Emirates' history. Outside, international news crews broadcast live updates against the backdrop of police vehicles and ambulances. The official death toll stood at 3, Jalil's younger relative, killed by security in the initial confusion. One of Jasim's security detail, shot through the throat during the firefight, and most prominently, Vikram Patel, the technology entrepreneur who had bled out from a gunshot wound to his femoral artery before medical assistance could reach him. 7 others were hospitalized with injuries ranging from gunshot wounds to trauma sustained during the panicked evacuation. Dozens more were treated for minor injuries and shock. Rosa sat in a holding cell at Dubai Police Headquarters, still wearing her blood-spattered wedding gown. Security footage showed her attempting to stop the violence, placing herself between armed men, trying to reason with her husbands and Jasim alike. These actions likely saved her from immediate charges of inciting violence, but they did nothing to mitigate the fundamental frauds she had committed. International media descended on the story with unprecedented fervor. Headlines worldwide declared variations of royal wedding bloodbath, and bride's triple life ends in tragedy. Privacy laws that typically protected Dubai's elite were rendered meaningless as cell phone footage of the confrontation spread across social media platforms. The legal complexities of this case are extraordinary, explained legal analyst Samira Hakim on a CNN special report. We're dealing with multiple valid marriages across different jurisdictions, contractual fraud, possible immigration violations, and now manslaughter or even potential murder charges, depending on how prosecutors interpret the chain of events. Investigators pieced together the sequence of the tragedy through witness statements and security camera footage. Forensic accountants traced the financial arrangements between Rosa and her 3 contract husbands, uncovering a network of similar arrangements throughout Dubai's expatriate communities. Farid Khoury, recovering from a shoulder wound in a private hospital room under police guard, released a statement through his attorney expressing grief over the violence but maintaining that his arrangement with Rosa had been consensual between adults. "The tragedy is not the contracts," the statement read. "The tragedy is the deception that multiplied them." Jalil Al-Zabi, the eldest of Rosa's husbands and now mourning his nephew, retreated to his family compound, refusing all contact with authorities beyond his initial statement. His family began traditional mourning rituals while their attorneys prepared defenses against potential charges. Sheikh Jasim, protected by both wealth and royal status, issued no public statement. His family's influence ensured he would face no legal consequences despite his orchestration of the confrontation. Sources within his circle suggested he had already left Dubai for a family property in Switzerland, leaving others to manage the fallout. As morning light illuminated the blood-stained marble of what should have been a celebration of love, one police investigator was overhead making an observation that would later be quoted in case studies worldwide. What began as a desperate woman's survival tactic had ended in a bloodbath that would forever change how Dubai's elites viewed their private arrangements. In her cell, Rosa clutched a thin blanket around her shoulders, the weight of her choices finally crushing whatever rationalizations had sustained her through years of deception. 3 men dead, lives destroyed, families shattered, all stemming from that first decision to trade truth for security, to believe she could control a web of lies that had ultimately consumed everything it touched. For 23 days after her arrest, Rosa Delgado maintained complete silence. She sat in Dubai Women's Detention Center, still occasionally reaching for the phantom weight of 3 different wedding rings that had been confiscated along with her dignity. Guards reported she barely ate, rarely slept, and spent hours staring at the wall of her cell as if reading invisible text. Meanwhile, Dubai Police's Financial Crimes Division unraveled the intricate web she had woven. Forensic accountants traced transfers from each husband to accounts in Manila, documenting over $425,000 moved during a 2-year period. Records showed her mother's medical treatments had indeed been extensive, but had cost less than half the amount Rosa had acquired through her marriages. The original motive appears legitimate, noted Detective Khalid Mahmood in his report, but the scheme continued well beyond the medical necessity, evolving into something more complex. The investigation expanded beyond Rosa's case, targeting Elena Garcia, the marriage broker who had facilitated the arrangements. Authorities located her attempting to flee to Thailand, her luggage containing client lists, template contracts, and cash equivalents worth over $300,000. Under interrogation, Elena revealed an underground network that had arranged more than 200 contract marriages over 5 years. "We provided a service that met a market demand," Elena insisted during questioning. These were consensual arrangements between adults with mutual benefits. Elena's client records exposed dozens of similar schemes throughout Dubai's expatriate communities. 15 additional Filipinas were identified as maintaining multiple contract marriages. 3 Russian women had created similar arrangements. An Indonesian domestic worker had maintained 5 simultaneous marriages before returning to Jakarta with nearly $1 million. As the investigation expanded, international diplomatic tensions erupted. The Philippines government sent legal representatives to protect their nationals' rights. The Indian embassy demanded involvement after Vikram's death. Lebanese officials requested extradition of their citizens implicated in fraudulent marriages. The most significant discovery came in Rosa's possessions: 3 journals meticulously documenting her multiple lives. The handwritten entries revealed not just the mechanics of her deception but her psychological evolution as the boundaries between her identities blurred. "Sometimes I catch myself using Emirati phrases with Farid or speaking to Vikram about memories I created with Jalil," she wrote 6 months before her arrest. "The walls between myselves are thinning. I'm losing track of who I really am." Dr. Sofia Nabulsi, the court-appointed forensic psychologist, spent 32 hours evaluating Rosa over 8 sessions. Her findings would become central to both prosecution and defense strategies. The subject presents a case study in compartmentalization and adaptive identity formation. Dr. Nabulsi testified during pretrial hearings. Her childhood in extreme poverty created the foundation for her later behaviors. Rosa's psychological profile revealed early trauma, not just poverty but witnessing domestic violence between her parents before her father's disappearance, experiencing periods of hunger severe enough to cause developmental concerns, and assuming adult responsibilities by age 9 when she began working to help support her siblings. What's remarkable is not that she created multiple identities, Dr. Nabulsi explained, but how completely she inhabited each one. Brain scans show that when discussing her different personas, different neural pathways activate. She wasn't simply lying. She was becoming different versions of herself. The most disturbing aspect of Rosa's psychology emerged when Dr. Nabulsi asked her to identify her genuine emotions toward each man in her life. "I don't know anymore," Rosa admitted after long silence. "With Farid, I felt respected. With Vikram, understood. With Jalil, protected. With Jasim, I thought I felt love, but maybe that was just relief at the possibility of ending the deceptions." The official diagnosis, adaptive personality disorder with dissociative features, sparked debate in psychiatric circles. Some experts argued it was simply a clinical term for practice deception. Others recognized the profound psychological toll of maintaining multiple identities over extended periods. Each time she shifted identities, she experienced microdissociative episodes, Dr. Nabulsi explained. Her brain essentially had to shut down aspects of one personality to access another. Over time, this created confusion about her authentic self. The psychological assessment recognized Rosa's genuine remorse for the deaths but questioned whether she fully comprehended her responsibility. She expressed specific grief about Vikram. "He trusted me with his deepest truth, and I betrayed him with my lies," while seeming almost detached when discussing the other casualties. Dr. Nabulsi's most disturbing conclusion wasn't that Rosa was a sociopath. It was that she had become so good at deception that she had lost her own truth. The woman who had created multiple identities to survive had ultimately become a stranger to herself. The trial of Rosa Delgado began on September 12, 2024, in Dubai's criminal court. International media transformed the proceedings into a global spectacle, with news organizations from 32 countries applying for credentials. Court officials ultimately limited press access to 20 representatives, resulting in unprecedented cooperation between competing outlets. The prosecution presented a methodical case built on financial records, witness testimony, and Rosa's own journals. Evidence showed not just the existence of multiple marriages but the calculated nature of each deception. The different wardrobes, the separate phones, the practiced mannerisms tailored to each husband's expectations. This was not a desperate act by a cornered woman, prosecutor Mohammed Al-Ansari argued. This was a sophisticated criminal enterprise that evolved over years, claimed multiple victims, and ultimately resulted in 3 deaths. Farid Khoury's testimony provided the most damning evidence against Rosa. Still wearing a sling from his gunshot wound, he described his gradual emotional investment in what he had initially viewed as a business arrangement. "I knew our marriage was a contract," he stated, his voice steady. "What I didn't know was that I was just one of many such contracts." The exclusivity was implied, if not explicitly stated. When asked if he had developed genuine feelings for Rosa, Farid paused before answering. "Yes," he finally admitted. "Despite knowing its foundation was artificial, the relationship became real to me. That's what makes this betrayal so profound." Expert testimony on UAE marriage law established the legal implications of Rosa's actions. Islamic legal scholars explained the severity of marriage fraud in a society where family bonds form the cultural foundation. Inheritance experts detailed how contract marriages manipulated financial systems designed to protect family wealth. On the trial's 4th day, Rosa finally broke her silence. Her defense team had built a case around diminished capacity, arguing that desperate circumstances and psychological fragmentation had compromised her ability to understand the full implications of her actions. "I never intended to hurt anyone," she began, her voice barely audible. What started as a desperate measure to save my mother became something else. Something I couldn't control or escape. Rosa described growing up in a Manila slum, watching her mother's health deteriorate while working 3 jobs that still couldn't cover basic necessities. She explained the initial contract with Farid as a lifeline she couldn't refuse. The first marriage was about survival, she testified. But the second and third, I can't explain them except to say that once you cross certain lines, other boundaries become easier to ignore. The defense introduced evidence of her mother's medical records, showing legitimate use of at least some funds. Character witnesses from the Filipino community testified to Rosa's initial reputation as a hardworking, honest woman before her involvement with Elena's network. On the 6th day of the trial, Rosa faced cross-examination, a methodical dismantling of her narrative by prosecutor Al-Ansari. You claim your actions were motivated by your mother's medical needs, he began. Yet financial records show transfers continued long after her successful treatment. Where did this additional money go? Rosa described renovations to her family's home, educational funds for her siblings, and savings for her mother's future care. The prosecutor then projected bank records showing significant personal expenditures, designer clothing for her various personas, luxury rentals to maintain appearances with her husband's, expensive jewelry. These don't appear to be the spending patterns of a desperate daughter focused solely on her mother's survival, Al-Ansari observed. The most devastating moment came when he presented evidence of Rosa's correspondence with Elena regarding a potential 4th contract marriage. Negotiations that occurred after her engagement to Sheikh Jasim. Even after finding what you describe as genuine love with Sheikh Al-Qasimi, you continued exploring additional fraudulent marriages, the prosecutor noted. How do you explain this? Rosa's composure finally broke. I don't know who I am anymore, she sobbed. Each new identity was easier to create than the last. I told myself it was still about my family, but something changed inside me. I started to enjoy the power, the different lives, the way these successful men valued different versions of me when the real me had always been invisible. The prosecution displayed photographs of Vikram Patel and the other deceased victims on courtroom screens. Did you consider how your deceptions might ultimately harm these men? I never meant for anyone to die, Rosa whispered, staring at the images. I just wanted to escape poverty. But I became addicted to being someone else. Someone who mattered. After deliberating for 14 hours, the 3-judge panel delivered their verdict on September 21, 2024. The courtroom fell silent as Chief Judge Hamad Al-Suwaidi read the decision. On the charge of multiple fraudulent marriages, guilty. On the charge of criminal financial deception, guilty. On the charge of identity falsification, guilty. On the charge of criminal financial deception, guilty. On the charge of identity falsification, guilty. On the charge of indirect causation of death, guilty. Judge Al-Suwaidi continued, the court recognizes the mitigating circumstances of the defendant's initial motivation and psychological condition. However, the premeditated nature of the deceptions and their catastrophic consequences cannot be overlooked. The sentence, 25 years in Dubai women's prison with the possibility of deportation to the Philippines after serving a minimum of 15 years. The victims' families received the verdict with solemn acknowledgement. Jalil Al-Zabi, who had lost both his nephew and whatever genuine connection he had felt with Rosa, nodded once before leaving the courtroom surrounded by relatives. Farid Khoury released a brief statement through his attorney. No sentence can restore what was lost. Justice has been served, but healing remains elusive. From India, Vikram Patel's parents expressed gratitude for the conviction while mourning a son whose final moments had been consumed by betrayal. We lost him twice, his father told reporters. First to a marriage we never understood, then to violence we never imagined. Rosa stood impassively as the sentence was read, but requested permission to address the court one final time before being taken to prison. To my mother watching from Manila, she said, facing the video link where Rosa Delgado could be seen wiping tears. I am sorry that my attempts to help you became something so twisted. To the families who lost loved ones because of my deceptions, no apology can suffice, but I offer it nonetheless. And to myself, the person I was before all this began. I'm sorry I lost you along the way. Judge Al-Suwaidi's closing remarks would later be quoted in legal textbooks examining the case. This court has witnessed many criminal acts driven by greed, passion, or malice. What distinguishes this case is its evolution from understandable desperation to unrecognizable moral corruption. The defendant's actions remind us that the most dangerous deceptions are those we eventually believe ourselves. As Rosa was led from the courtroom, international debates were already forming around the case. Some viewed her as a victim of circumstance, a woman forced by economic desperation into increasingly questionable choices. Others saw a calculating predator who exploited vulnerable men and cultural traditions for financial gain. The truth, like Rosa herself, contained multitudes, layers of motivation, justification, and corruption that had transformed a desperate daughter into a woman who had lost herself in the reflections of others' desires. Rosa Delgado sat in the visiting room of Dubai Women's Prison, her hands folded neatly on the metal table. She wore the standard blue uniform of long-term inmates, her once elaborate hairstyles replaced by a simple ponytail. The only remnant of her former appearance was her impeccable posture, a habit from her days moving through elite social circles that prison had failed to break. "I understand myself better now," she told the documentary filmmaker recording their conversation. "The psychologist here says I've made progress recognizing the real Rosa beneath all those personas." Her first year in prison had been marked by profound depression. Guards reported she barely spoke, refused most meals, and spent hours staring at the ceiling of her cell. The prison psychologist diagnosed severe identity disintegration, the simultaneous collapse of multiple personas leaving a psychological void. "I didn't know who to be without an audience," Rosa explained. "All my identities were performances for specific men. Without them watching, who was I supposed to be?" Her recovery began with letters, hundreds of them, written to her mother but never sent. These therapeutic exercises, encouraged by the prison counselor, allowed Rosa to reconnect with her original motivations before they became corrupted. "Dear Mama," one letter began, "today I remembered the girl who left Manila to save you. She was desperate but honest. She believed the end justified the means, but only temporarily. I lost her somewhere along the way. I'm trying to find her again." Prison diary excerpts revealed her gradual acceptance of responsibility. Early entries showed deflection and rationalization, blaming Elena for encouraging multiple contracts, blaming wealth inequality for creating desperate choices, blaming her husbands for believing what they wanted to see. Later writings showed increasing self-awareness. "The truth is I enjoyed the power," she wrote in her third year. "Being invisible as a domestic worker, then controlling these wealthy, influential men through carefully crafted personas. It was intoxicating. I told myself it was survival, but it became domination." Rosa gradually emerged as a leader among Filipino inmates, organizing support groups for domestic workers imprisoned for various offenses. She translated for new arrivals, helped illiterate women write appeals, and shared her cautionary tale with those tempted by similar schemes. "I became so focused on escaping poverty that I created a prison of lies long before I ended up in this actual prison," she told a group of recent arrivals. "Don't make my mistakes." The Rosa Delgado case transformed Dubai's marriage landscape. Authorities conducted a systematic review of all marriages involving foreign nationals over the previous 5 years, uncovering 178 suspected contract arrangements. Legal reforms established new verification requirements, mandatory interviews with both parties, financial disclosure statements, and waiting periods between application and ceremony. International marriage brokers like Elena were classified as human traffickers, facing penalties of up to 30 years imprisonment. Elena herself received an 18-year sentence after cooperating with authorities to dismantle the network she had helped build. The scandal exposed socioeconomic factors driving the contract marriage industry. Economic analysis revealed the average domestic worker in Dubai earned approximately $5,800 annually while witnessing daily displays of extreme wealth. This disparity created fertile ground for desperate measures. What happened with Rosa Delgado wasn't just individual moral failure, explained sociologist Dr. Layla Mahmood. It was the predictable outcome of a system that imports vulnerable workers, exposes them to unattainable luxury, and provides few legitimate pathways to economic mobility. Diplomatic tensions between the Philippines and UAE resulted in temporary restrictions on domestic worker visas and enhanced monitoring of Filipino nationals' welfare. Similar measures affected other countries whose citizens had participated in contract marriage schemes. The case prompted uncomfortable conversations in Dubai's elite circles about exploitation in various forms. Wealthy families who had considered their domestic staff fortunate recipients of their generosity were forced to confront the reality of how these workers perceived their position. The most disturbing aspect wasn't the fraud itself, commented legal analyst Omar Al-Jabri. It was how easily these contract spouses integrated into high society without detection. It revealed how little the wealthy know about the people in their intimate spaces, the invisible workforce that enables their lifestyle. Farid Khoury returned to Beirut after recovering from his injuries, abandoning his Dubai business interests and retiring from public life. Associates reported he had become reclusive, struggling with trust issues that affected both personal and professional relationships. The physical wound healed, his longtime assistant told reporters. The psychological wound may never close. Sheikh Jasim al-Qasimi remained abroad for 2 years following the incident, his family citing business commitments to explain his absence. Upon returning to Dubai, he established the Transparency Foundation, which funded research into identity verification technologies and support services for fraud victims. Jasim never spoke publicly about Rosa, but associates noted he had become more circumspect in both business and personal dealings. His promised marriage to a cousin from another prominent family was conducted with minimal public ceremony, a stark contrast to the extravagant event planned with Rosa. Elena Garcia, from her prison cell, provided authorities with insights into the psychology of both contract spouses and their clients. These arrangements worked because each side got something they desperately needed, she explained. The women needed financial security. The men needed to satisfy family or social expectations without the complications of genuine relationships. When asked if she regretted her role in the tragedy, Elena paused before answering. I regret the deaths, of course. But the arrangements themselves? They solved problems for people society had trapped in impossible situations. 6 months after Rosa's conviction, Rosa Delgado died peacefully in her sleep in the comfortable Manila apartment her daughter's deceptions had provided. The medical treatments had extended her life by 3 years, time she spent caring for Rosa's siblings and praying for her daughter's soul. Rosa received the news in prison. Guards reported she didn't cry, didn't speak for days afterward. When she finally responded, it was to request permission to write a letter to be read at her mother's funeral, since she couldn't attend. My mother only knew part of my life in Dubai, the letter began. She knew I sent money for her treatments. She believed I had found legitimate success. I never told her how that money was earned because I wanted her to be proud of me. Now I wonder if honesty might have been the greater gift. The Manila community's response to Rosa's case revealed complex attitudes toward overseas workers' obligations. Some neighbors condemned her actions as bringing shame to Filipinos abroad. Others viewed her as a victim of circumstance who had gone to extreme lengths for family, a distorted version of the sacrifice many made leaving home for work in wealthy countries. Rosa's childhood home, renovated with her fraudulently obtained funds, stood empty after Lida's death. Her siblings, now adults with their own lives shaped by their sister's financial support, rarely visited the property with its complicated legacy. From her prison cell, Rosa continued writing letters to her deceased mother, a therapeutic practice encouraged by her counselor. Dear Mama, one began. Today I realized something that might help me forgive myself eventually. I didn't become a criminal when I signed those marriage contracts. I became a criminal when I forgot why I signed them, when your survival stopped being enough, and I started craving the power, the different lives, the escape from being just another invisible Filipina in this city of gold. The cruel irony wasn't lost on anyone. Rosa had sacrificed her freedom and integrity for someone who would never benefit from it, continuing her deceptions long after the original justification had passed. Sociologists, psychologists, and criminologists studied the Delgado case for years, drawing various conclusions about its broader implications. Some focused on the economic desperation that drove initial decisions. Others examined how performance becomes reality when maintained over time. The most fascinating aspect of this case isn't the criminal behavior, noted forensic psychologist Dr. Adam Chun. It's how it demonstrates that identity itself is more malleable than we like to believe. Rosa Delgado didn't just pretend to be different women. She became them, to the point where she lost track of her original self. The case prompted research into similar identity deceptions across cultures and contexts. Psychological studies identified warning signs: inconsistent personal histories, compartmentalized social circles, unexplained absences, and emotional responses that seemed calibrated to others' expectations rather than genuine. Anyone is capable of Rosa's behaviors under certain conditions, Dr. Chun concluded. The combination of desperate circumstances, perceived justification, and gradual normalization of deception creates a perfect storm where moral boundaries become increasingly negotiable. Perhaps the most profound question raised by the case was philosophical. If Rosa genuinely experienced different emotions with each husband, which version represented her authentic self? Was the woman who loved her mother enough to commit fraud more real than the woman who continued those frauds after her mother recovered? Was her apparent love for Jasim genuine, or simply relief at the prospect of ending her deceptions? The most dangerous deception isn't the one that fools others. It's the one that convinces us our actions are justified. Rosa Delgado began with understandable motivation and ended with inexcusable choices, the line between necessity and opportunity blurring with each new identity she created. As our documentary comes to a close, we're left with the haunting complexity of Rosa Delgado's story. A woman who began with desperate love for her mother ended with 3 dead men and shattered lives across multiple continents. A domestic worker invisible to the wealthy families she served transformed herself into the center of their world through calculated deception. A daughter determined to save her mother ultimately destroyed herself instead. Rosa continues serving her sentence, eligible for parole consideration in 2039 when she will be 52 years old. Prison officials report she has become a model inmate, working in the prison library and continuing to assist other Filipino prisoners with translation and support. Her case has become required study for immigration officials, marriage registrars, and law enforcement throughout the Gulf region. The contract marriage industry hasn't disappeared, but it has been driven further underground, with heightened risks and increased sophistication. Like all black markets born of desperation and opportunity, it adapts rather than dissolves when exposed. If you found this story compelling, please subscribe and share this episode. Your support allows us to continue investigating the complex human dramas that reveal the darkest and most fascinating aspects of human psychology. Next week, we investigate how a respected Harvard neurosurgeon's secret life as a cult leader led to the deaths of 12 patients. The brain surgeon who played God with more than just medicine. You won't want to miss the disturbing story of Dr. Marcus Whitman and the patients who trusted him with their brains, their beliefs, and ultimately, their lives. Until then, remember that the most convincing lies are the ones we tell ourselves, and the most dangerous people are often those we've invited into our lives with open arms and closed eyes.